Welcome to Award-Winning Photography Explained. I am Manpreet and I'm going to be your host today. We have with us Jason Bowie. Jason is an award-winning, nationally accredited photographer specializing in sports and portrait, based in New Brunswick, Canada. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Manpreet.
Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in photography and specifically sports photography, because that's what the image is about.
Sure. So I live in Rugby, New Brunswick, which is a sort of a bedroom community of the Greater Moncton area. It's the largest city in the province of New Brunswick, and I've been here since 2008. I used to live in Halifax, but I have two kids that played sports all the way through high school and middle school. And I started taking photos of them when they were born. And then as they started to become more competitive in the sporting world, I just sort of followed them around. And photography appealed to me because I have a growth and learning mindset, and it really satisfied that element of my personality. And it was a creative outlet for me to express myself and to not define myself necessarily by the work that I do to pay the bills.
Jason, your image, Keep Your Eye on the Ball, got the Best in Class award in the press category for Professional Photographers of Canada 2022 Annual National Competition. It's a national exhibition celebrating the best of Canadian professional photography. So let me quickly bring up that image here. And there we go. That's an amazing image, Jason. That's absolutely incredible. But before we get into the image, tell me a little bit about what is Professional Photographers of Canada, or PPOC?
So it's an organization that has a diverse set of members from all kinds of backgrounds and interests, and it's basically an association of professional photographers that elevate the craft, support one another, support the industry, have public outreach to define and to support what professional photography is to clients and to its membership. Yeah, I'd say that's in a nutshell what it is.
Yeah, much required. Most photographers are, solo players.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
well, this image, Keep Your Eye on the Ball. The ball has just escaped from his hand, and you know it's going to be a huge pile up in the next fraction of a second. And you have managed to catch it at its absolute peak. The main person, the second from the left, his eyes are crisp, sharp, okay, and everybody is looking at the ball. So this makes for a very powerful image with a great composition. Now tell me, who was this shot for? Did you do it for the team, for the players, or just for yourself?
Well, I guess really what it boils down to is a combination of all three. I did a lot of work for the local rugby club, Black Tide Rugby, for both the senior men's and senior women's clubs, but also U19, U17, Spruce Rugby, which is under the umbrella of Rugby New Brunswick. My daughter and my son both played rugby, and so I have a lot of contacts and a lot of friends in the rugby community. It gives me a fair bit of access to the games and to the field. And rugby, unlike a lot of other sports, is pretty relaxed. You can move about the sidelines as long as you're not really in the path of the flag people on the sidelines. You can go in the end zone. It's not like a football end zone where you have to stay outside the painted lines of the field. When they come in to score a try, they're trying to get to the middle to make it easier for the kicker. And really, it's about positioning and knowing the game and being in the right place at the right time. This particular image, of course, was during a ruck, and you see the scrum half launching the ball laterally to one of his teammates, but the opposing players are not making it easy for him.
Yeah, That's true. You have access to this game from around the field, but you still needed to know where to position yourself, where to be looking at for the action. You had to be anticipating the action before it happened and be ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, knowing sort of how the play is going to evolve, where the ball might come out.
Hmm.
You know, be it sometimes I get great shots on the sideline. Sometimes I get great shots in the end zone. You see a momentum building up on one side or the other, and oftentimes I end up trying to hedge my bets and be in the right place at the right times. It works out most of the time, but then the momentum shifts and I'm ending up having to rush down to the other side or
Hmm.
the other end to catch the action. So if it's a game that's well matched like this particular game was,
Yeah.
two clubs that are very fiercely competitive, well matched, and go back and forth, it
Hmm.
makes for an exciting game for me, and I get lots of exercise trying to chase them around.
I'm sure. Have you played the game yourself?
No, I never have actually.
Oh, but you followed it quite a bit, huh?
I followed it quite a bit. I'd say for the past 7 years. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the interest in the sport that would help the photographer, not necessarily participating in it. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And then besides knowing the sport, you had to know your gear very well, your equipment that you're using, because at that time, I don't think you got the time to fiddle around and check your settings, right?
No, absolutely.
So what is the gear that you used for this? And then you can carry on to tell me what kind of setting you used and why.
Sure. Well, this was shot on the new Canon. Well, I guess it's not really new, but fairly new. One of the new mirrorless bodies by Canon, the R5.
Hmm. It's a great
And
camera.
if you shoot it on electronic mode, you can create a post-production nightmare for yourself. But I usually go in between electronic, um, and not like go full. There's a combination mechanical and first electronic first curtain. So that's usually where I sit for rugby. But I'll shoot 1/2000th of a second because things move so quickly.
Hmm.
In a lot of sports, I have a lot of fast lenses. I have a 300 prime and a 400 prime 2.8. But on this particular shot, I was shooting. It's a very bright day,
Hmm.
and I was experimenting with the 100 to 400 with an RF,
Adapter.
adapter for the R5 because it was an EF lens.
Hmm.
So I was shooting at 7.1, and I think it was 183 millimeters on that 100 to 400, and and I was in shutter priority because the light changes a lot. So
Yeah.
I want to control most of the settings,
Hmm.
but I like the camera to handle some of the ISO decisions because I
Yeah.
can deal with any noise in post production.
Hmm. Yeah, the cameras today are great, and having a floating ISO makes sense.
Yeah. And
Excellent.
the R5's nice. The big change that I noticed going to mirrorless from my other traditional digital SLR cameras, because I use a Canon 5D Mark IV in my studio, and I have a
Hmm.
1DX Mark II, which is a
Hmm.
camera I still love.
Hmm.
But the eye tracking and the infinite focal points through the electronic viewfinder is a game changer for me.
Yeah. Were you using eye tracking here?
Yeah, I was actually, which is probably why it's so tack sharp on the defender's eye in the left on the
Yes.
upper left.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's, I mean, 10 years back or even 15 years back, it would have been so difficult to get a shot like this.
Yeah, a
It,
lot of luck goes into it. I have way
yes,
more keepers with the new technology,
yes, yes.
which means more post production.
Well, yeah, and you got to have a great computer for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you use a tripod? I guess not. You'd probably be roaming around, walking around on the field, and
Yeah, no, it was
handheld,
handheld, and
not even a monopod.
I like to shoot low, as you probably can tell from the perspective of this image. I generally take a knee, I'll go down on one knee, and I'll keep my left knee at a 45-degree angle, and I'll brace my my elbow on my knee, and that
Uh-huh.
gives me a steady platform to hold the camera. So I
Okay.
can handhold a 300 prime and a 400 prime quite easily. Generally try to put the 400 prime on a monopod,
Mm-hmm.
but I can handhold it. It's an RF version of the lens, so it's much lighter than the EF version, so it's not too
Mm-hmm.
bad.
And at 2000th of a second, then would you be using um, the shake compensation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, talking about post production, what do you do for sports photography? It's a little different from journalistic photography, right? That you can do a bit of post production.
Yeah, like in competition, you know, if I was doing this for the club and I wanted to kind of clean it up and provide a really nice image for the players and not enter it in competition, then
Mm-hmm.
there's certain elements that I can remove and can't remove
Mm-hmm.
in the image itself. Um, the press category, you can make minor adjustments in the contrast, the lightness, adjust the blacks a little bit, adjust the shadows, but you can't really remove something that's in the image and take it out completely.
Mm-hmm. And what is the software that you use?
Well, I run it through generally to do a global lens sharpening and deal with any lens distortion if it's there. Using a program called DxO Pure Raw.
Yeah, I've heard
I
great
find,
things about that.
well, I was using Topaz Noise and Topaz Sharpen AI
Uh-huh.
software, and it's good.
Mhm.
But I find I get better results with my sports images with this new program.
Ah. Do
And
you
then I will
also?
do after I do that sort of correction, it imports it into Photoshop, where I make any of the other adjustments from there.
Okay, so in that program, you're dealing with raw.
Dealing with RAW, it converts to RAW. You have the choice to export it into Photoshop as an uncompressed file, or you can compress it into a JPEG. I never compress it into a JPEG. I want to bring it in as big as possible.
Yeah,
Um,
makes sense.
yeah.
And what do you do your culling in?
Well, when this image was taken, I would call in Lightroom, but it's clunky and it's
Yeah.
slow.
Mm-hmm.
Still a great program, but I've since discovered Apparent Software, which is much faster. It incorporates a little bit of AI and will take a set of images and kind of tell me visually with little ellipse under the eye and little visual cues in the image, which image from the set might be the sharpest and best image to choose, and then I can get rid of the other ones, or uh, flag them or highlight them in a specific color and import just the ones that I want into Lightroom or
Ah,
into DxO Pure Raw.
that helps. And what program is this again?
It's called Apparent Software. Or, sorry, not Apparent Software. Narrative Select. Narrative
Narrative
Select.
Select.
Yeah,
Hmm. I have to check it out.
yeah. It's a little. If you look on, if you downloaded it, the icon's like a sort of a purple circle with. It looks like a little maze in the middle of it.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting.
I
These
can
days
send
there
you
are
the details after the call, actually.
sure.
Yeah.
These days there are so many softwares that are coming out. A lot of them generated with AI.
Well,
It's
I
never.
got I got the program from another photographer who shoots for the Canada Games, and
Yeah.
I said, you're doing so many sports in the run of a couple of days. How are you keeping up with the demand when the media desk wants images so quickly? And she told me about this software that I hadn't heard about before, and
Hmm.
it works great.
Huh, that's so interesting. These days, AI is becoming more mainstream with a lot of softwares, and it's a great time to be a photographer.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree. And so many
Yeah.
online resources to help refine things, or if the AI doesn't get it quite right, you can mask whatever you're not happy with. edit
Uh-huh.
the image or correct it yourself.
Right, right. No, the results are absolutely stunning. So, and you entered this in the national competition for PPOC.
I did,
Um,
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What do judges look for in an image, specifically in the sports and journalistic genre?
Well, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I think peak action is one of the core elements. I
Uh-huh.
think the image has to have an emotional impact and tell a story. I think the maker's always looking to elicit a reaction or emotion from the viewer, and from the judges. I made a personal choice to make this image, as you know, we're shooting digital, so I mean it comes out of the camera in color unless I selected to shoot not in color. But it was a color image to start with. But
Mhm.
I really love black and white sports photography. So often when I do client work, I'll do some of it in black and white. And I think people in my generation
Yeah.
love the black and white photography.
Hmm.
People in my parents' generation tend to not resonate with it as much because I think when they were growing up, all they had was black and white. So it depends on the viewer and the audience in terms of what.
Hmm.
But for this particular one, I thought the judges would react a little stronger to the contrast
Uh-huh.
of the black and white image versus the color one.
No, I think also what is close to your heart, what makes you feel good, also then kind of helps you generate a style where people start recognizing that, yes, this image is Jason's, right?
That's right.
So entering competitions, yeah, for the longest time, I thought, why why enter competitions? Why have some people come and judge your image? But then I personally attended the judging of one of the competitions of PPOC, and it changed my outlook completely. What do you feel that entering competitions, is it worth it for photographers?
I think it is. I mean, I'll share a personal story. This
Mhm.
past year, I almost didn't enter a competition because I didn't do a lot of new work in the summer of
Mhm.
2021 because my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer on the Monday following Mother's Day and had a double mastectomy on the 2nd of June.
Well, I'm
And
sorry to hear
so
that.
the recovery, she's good now.
Okay,
She's a
good, good.
very strong person, much stronger than me. And her story I'm sharing because she's been very open and transparent about it because she wanted, any woman to take ownership for their own breast health. And I mean that this call's not about that, but competition. I was a bit reticent in 2021. I did very well in 2020. And I was a finalist for Commercial Photographer of the Year. I was in the short list for Commercial Photographer of the Year again this past competition. But I
Mhm.
really struggled with finding that fourth image. I knew this image was strong. I felt good about it. I felt good about a couple of other images that I had that, I started to create some work in July and August after she was better. Um, but what competition does for me is it aligns with um, the community that we work and exist in as a member, as accredited members of the Professional Photographers of Canada or PPOC. Um, and I really wanted to be able to describe myself as an award-winning photographer from a credibility perspective, from a personal goal perspective. It eliminates some of that imposter syndrome because I
Yeah,
wasn't
true.
formally trained
Hmm.
in a structured photography curriculum at a post secondary institution. I really learned through hours and hours and hours of trial and error, online learning, in person courses uh, over 2.5 decades.
Hmm.
So competition really is a validation of all that effort. And I mentioned earlier that learning and growth mindset. It's and you said it best. I mean, there's never been a better time to be a photographer. There's so many resources,
Yeah.
quick tutorial videos online,
Hmm.
deep dive courses on specific interests that you might want to sharpen your skills at.
Yeah. So let me get that here. So I believe, talking of courses, I think PPOC also has quite a bit of training that they do help the photographers.
Yeah, and I honestly, I joined PPOC in March of 2020 at the
Oh.
start, basically, of the pandemic, and I think it really saved my mental health. It gave me something to focus on. I was stuck in my office. I couldn't travel for work.
Hmm.
Uh, so it really, I, I, I made so many great friends that I still communicate with almost on a daily basis within the PPOC. We have a PPOC buddies chat with a group of people that I met in the first competition.
Uh-huh.
I had great mentorship within the association. It's really been a fantastic experience.
Excellent, excellent. Now, if there's somebody wanting to start in sports or journalistic photography, and they're just thinking about it, what would your advice be? Is there still a market for this genre?
Well, I think there is. For me, it's a means to an end. First of all, I love to shoot sports, and I
Uh-huh.
love to shoot photojournalism, and I would describe myself as a commercial photographer. From a revenue generation perspective, there's certainly opportunity, and you can bid on big work, and you can put contracts together for events. Some of the things that I do, the onus is on me to produce a good quality image so that I can sell the image to an athlete or to an athlete's family member
Hmm.
or to an association or a team.
Hmm.
But for my sort of modus operandi, it gets people into the studio. It helps my network. It keeps my name alive in the community. I don't think a sporting event that I can go to in the greater Moncton area that people don't know who I am because I'm
Hmm.
at a lot of places on the weekends.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, for me, it's really networking and keeping my studio alive.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for sharing your story, for sharing the experience about your wife, um, and your knowledge and your images. Uh, if somebody wants to follow you or see your images, what's the best place they can do it?
Well, I regularly post on Instagram. I have a website, but it's not it's not very well updated. I'm so lazy.
Uh-huh.
But Instagram is a place where I actually post new work. And I'm slowly learning how to leverage reels, but I find that's a new area that I have to sharpen my skill.
Yeah, don't we all? Well, I'll make sure I put all your links, also in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, your expertise, and I'll be hopefully seeing you again on the show.
It's a real pleasure. I look forward to meeting you in person.